everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Sleep Like a Boss podcast. I'm Annika Carroll, the CEO of Sleep Like a Boss, and I welcome you to this episode where we're talking about something that is all over the news right now, and that is blood sugar and sleep. And why I want to talk to you about this is that one of the main causes of night awakenings in people is low blood sugar. And we want to dive into that a little. What is blood sugar exactly? How do you know whether you have low blood sugar? How is this related to sleep? And what are ways to stabilize our blood sugar for better sleep? So to dive right in, what is blood sugar? Blood sugar is sugar in the form of glucose. And blood sugar is just the sugar that gets absorbed into your bloodstream from the foods that you eat. And it is the body's preferred source of energy. So whenever there's glucose available or sugar available, your body's going to jump on that and convert it into energy for you. So why is there such a hype about blood sugar at the moment? And I think it's just really gotten into the focus because some people have been doing some more research and have published some easy to read books about it. And it is a super important topic because no matter whether you want to sleep better, lose weight, balance your hormones, have better mood, have more energy throughout the day, prevent heart disease, avoid diabetes, having stable blood sugar levels throughout the day and night is foundational. If blood sugar is off, that causes a myriad of illnesses, diseases, issues like the ones I just mentioned above. And creating a stable blood sugar in the system is just crucial to overall health. So why is that? And how does the body control blood sugar levels? So every time we eat something, our blood sugar levels rise because every food we eat gets broken down into its building blocks, which are protein, fat, and glucose. And all of these, even the fat and the protein, raise blood sugar levels because everything basically gets turned into sugar one way or another, into glucose in the body eventually. And glucose, so protein and fat also raise your blood sugar, but glucose has an even bigger effect on raising your blood sugar. So if we eat sugar foods, think about cookies, dried fruit, or sometimes even foods that might not be sugary, but that we're sensitive to, our blood sugar doesn't just go up, which is fine, but it spikes. It really shoots through the roof. And most of the times this happens quite quickly. Sometimes it can be an hour, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours later. If that happens, we're likely talking about a food sensitivity, not a sugary food. And when our blood sugar spikes, or every time our blood sugar rises, the pancreas releases insulin. And insulin is a hormone that unlocks the key on the cell door so glucose can shuffle from the blood into the cell, because by itself, glucose couldn't get into the cell. The receptors don't work for glucose. So insulin comes in, is a key, opens the door, and lets the glucose get out of the bloodstream into the cell where it gives you energy. And so that way the blood sugar levels actually drop in the blood because the glucose goes into the cell, but the insulin stays in the blood for a while just because it doesn't get shoveled anywhere and just needs to get metabolized and out of the system. And that just takes longer than the blood sugar shoveling into the cells. So if we have a spike of blood sugar, we have basically a spike of a large amounts of insulin that come into the blood in order for us to help get that sugar out of the blood into the cell. And then that's gone. The insulin level stays high. And then we have this high amount of insulin in the bloodstream with low levels of glucose. And then we have a blood sugar crash. And all of a sudden, there's too much insulin and too little glucose. And that causes a problem. And how do you know what are signs that you have low blood sugar? If you're hangry, so you're hungry and irritable, like you're like, I need to eat, I can feel this, I'm very edgy and am irritated and I think I just need to eat, that's already a sign that your blood sugar is actually really low. If you're tired, assuming you've hydrated well, you've drunk enough, fatigue generally is a sign of low blood sugar. Shakiness, some people really get the shakes if they don't eat. That is an absolute sign of it's way too late. Your blood sugar is really low. Actually, if our blood sugar drops too low, we die. So shakiness is definitely a sign. Anxiety can also be a sign for people that their blood sugar is too low, and things like heart palpitations or irregularities in heartbeat can oftentimes also be blood sugar related. And if all these things happen and our blood sugar drops too low, our body needs a really quick access to energy, because the blood sugar, like I said, if it drops too low, you die. So the body's like, hello, give me something. And in order to get quick energy, what do we gravitate to? Foods that are high in glucose. So something sweet, something with a lot of sugar, just to give us that quick energy. And what happens, when we eat high amounts of sugar, our blood sugar spikes. And that then again releases a large amount of insulin to manage this blood sugar. So by doing this, by having these spikes, we actually also cause crashes, because the insulin stays in the blood while the glucose is already gone. And then we need more sugar. And then we spike the blood sugar again because we eat something sweet. And then insulin comes back in. And then this whole spiking, crashing roller coaster starts. And we grab the next cookie and we crash again, and we grab the next muffin and we crash again. And then we have a coffee with some syrup in it or something like that. And it just creates this roller coaster of glucose and insulin in the body. And how is this linked to sleep? The key to this with sleep is cortisol, and you hear us about talking about cortisol a lot. And cortisol is our stress and awake hormone. That's what we know it for, right? And we've also been talking about that cortisol is not just a stress hormone, but also an anti-inflammatory. And how if you have inflammation in the gut or you have a leaky gut, this can affect your sleep by raising cortisol as an anti-inflammatory and lowering melatonin, which can then cause night wakings. But cortisol doesn't just have the role of your sleep and stress hormone and your anti-inflammatory. It also has the role to provide the body with energy. And it is normally released in the mornings in large amounts to wake us up. That's what we call the cortisol awakening response. And it gives us energy, right? We want that nice spike of cortisol in the morning to really get going and make it through the day. It also rises, cortisol, in stressful situations, hence the stress hormone, and when we exercise. And how does cortisol give us energy? It actually floods the body with glucose, so with sugar. And this glucose, because we're not necessarily eating at that moment, comes from proteins that were stored in the liver that get converted into glucose in a process that's called gluconeogenesis. Sounds very scientific, but in the end, the body uses energy that it has stored before for these stressful situations, because it's still a stress hormone, right? To grab that energy that's stored somewhere in the body, convert it into glucose and give you energy. And this does give us quick energy and allow us to react quickly. It's intended for like stressful situations where there might be a threat. Think about the saber-toothed tiger back in the day. So the body is designed to react to stressful situations quickly, get that energy, focus, and deal with that situation. But this is something that is not to be done long-term, because that is not sustainable for the body. And in providing us with this quick energy, cortisol interacts with another hormone. And guess what that hormone is? That is insulin. And like we just said, insulin helps the body to shovel that extra glucose from the food into the cells, where it can then be used or stored. And whatever is extra gets stored in your liver and your muscles and fat cells for future use. And that process always ensures that there is not too much sugar in the blood. But how does this interaction between cortisol and insulin then cause sleep issues? Sleep issue number one is if we create continuous spikes of blood sugar and continuous release of insulin in the system, like I described before, we're sending our blood sugar on a roller coaster. So glucose, insulin, glucose, insulin, glucose, insulin. And every time we have a spike in blood sugar, it is followed by a crash. And cortisol follows the path. And whenever this crash comes, that means our blood sugar is too low. The body will release cortisol to help us out of that energy dip and to signal the body we need to eat. And so if we have a really unstable insulin and blood sugar curve throughout the day, we will also have very unstable insulin and blood sugar throughout the night, and we will have a very unstable cortisol level throughout the night. We want the cortisol higher during the day and lower at night, but if we constantly have blood sugar fluctuating, we will also have cortisol fluctuating, and that will not allow for a great release of melatonin and will not allow for great quality sleep. Number two, too much insulin. So by eating lots of sugary foods continuously, we're continuously spiking our blood sugar. We're continuously increasing the amount of insulin needed in the body to shovel the sugar away from the bloodstream into the cells. Over time, this will lead to insulin resistance. The cells become less sensitive to reacting to insulin, and this then eventually leads to diabetes, and it leads to inflammation. And when we're with inflammation again, we're again with cortisol, and then we have the anti-inflammatory properties of cortisol. So we have high cortisol, and that will affect our sleep as well. Sleep issue number 3 basically kind of links to the roller coaster, and sleep issue number 1 is if your blood sugar drops in the middle of the night because you didn't eat enough throughout the day, maybe your blood sugar is tanked and there wasn't enough energy available because you ate something, a cookie right before you like closed to bedtime, and that spiked your blood sugar and then it crashes, then your body will release cortisol in the middle of the night to either give you energy or to just wake you up and say, hey, blood sugar is too low, warning, warning, I need to eat. And then we're having sleep issues. So if you're suffering from frequent night wakings, it might be a good idea to look at how do you eat, when do you eat, what do you eat throughout the day? Because low blood sugar can be a really, really big piece of people's sleep puzzle that we can solve, and that might be triggering their wakings at night. What's another problem with the blood sugar discussion is that, and that's a challenge for people who have bad sleep and suffer from sleep struggles, is that if we didn't get a good night's sleep, we know that we consume more calories the next day, and we generally tend to gravitate towards unhealthy foods such as cookies, bagels, muffins, chocolate, you name it, everything that has sugar in it. And this is actually has nothing to do with your willpower of not being able to resist that food. This is your hormones, your hunger and satiety hormones, leptin and ghrelin in the body that create this problem because the signaling is off, because the body is more sensitive, and because the body's craving energy. So the body needs it's exhausted, it didn't get enough sleep, it doesn't have energy, it needs energy. So it gravitates towards anything that has quick glucose, so anything sweet. But we're actually trying to stay away from that because that just kind of exacerbates the problem for the next day. And so maybe we can dive into a few tips on what can you do to stabilize your blood sugar in general, or if you're somebody who has sleep issues and there in particular. The first tip is do not skip meals. Eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner for sure, potentially a snack mid-morning and mid-afternoon, depending on how you're doing. Whenever we get hungry, my tummy's growling, I am starving, your blood sugar is already in the basement. So we're already dropping. So we're already releasing cortisol to come back up in the curve and give us energy. Ideally, we want to avoid really dipping into those low blood sugar moments. So don't skip meals. Eat within an hour of waking up. And one really important thing is have a savory breakfast with a lot of protein. Oatmeal with fruit for breakfast with nothing else is a really bad idea. I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but it spikes your blood sugar and it doesn't set you up for a healthy blood sugar response for the rest of the day. Breakfast is really where everything gets set for the day. So having a savory breakfast, which could be eggs with toast and avocado, just to name something, or even like a burger patty with some veggies or those kinds of things, or some chicken, or if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, something with legumes or something with tofu once in a while, to set the body up for healthy blood sugar for the rest of the day. Focus on that protein in the morning. The other thing that's a really good idea is to eat a few non-starchy veggies. So like a small salad, a little bit of, I don't know, sauteed zucchini, cabbage, those kinds of things ahead, or first thing, and then eat protein and fat and eat your starchy veggies. So your potatoes, your carrots, those kinds of things, and sweet things at the end of a meal. Because then there's already food in the stomach that is digested slowly, and that will actually slow down the release of sugar into the bloodstream from the starchy vegetables that are specifically high in glucose. What you can also do is you can add cinnamon to your meals, because cinnamon actually lowers blood sugar levels and can really help. What I would also avoid are things like fruit juices. Like if you have an oatmeal and an orange juice for breakfast, like hello, blood sugar spike. So no fruit juices or dried fruit. Only eat the whole fruit, ideally with the peel, because that is where the fiber is, and the fiber just really helps regulate blood sugar. Another great tip is go for a 10-minute walk after every meal, like a brisk 10-minute walk. Or if you don't want to go for a walk, do some housework, like get out the vacuum, clean the bathroom, whatever it is. Be active, move. That helps get rid of excess glucose and stabilizes the blood sugar. If you want a snack, if you're like, I'm actually feeling like I'm getting hungry, I had breakfast, I'm good for a few hours, but now I really need something. Every snack that you eat should contain protein, fat, and fiber. If we're having only the apple with nothing with it, that's going to really spike our blood sugar. If we have an apple with some nut butter, for instance, on it, or we eat some hummus with veggie sticks, or a little piece of chicken with some olives, those kinds of things really help stabilize the blood sugar and avoid these spikes, so you then don't get the crash and reach for the cookie. And the other thing is eat until you're full. Ideally, the main meals that we eat should last us 3 to 4 hours, and then we should start thinking about the next meal. If you're not there, if you're like, after 2 hours, I'm hungry, really look at your plate and it says, are you having enough protein? Are you having enough fat to keep you satiated? And to make sure you avoid snacking all the time, because if you're snacking all the time, every time you snack, you spike your blood sugar. And this goes then all day if we're constantly eating something. And if you're somebody who doesn't have this feeling of good fullness all the time, you might be a candidate and you have sleep struggles, that snacking before bed might be a good idea for you. So about an hour before, you could try, and that's something to just experiment with and see how it goes. You could eat something like a handful of nuts. Pistachios are great because they contain melatonin. Gluten-free cracker with some avocado, some hummus, or some nut butter. Little piece of apple with nut butter and some cinnamon on it. Those kinds of things about an hour before bed, and see how that goes. For a lot of people, that actually helps them carry their glucose levels through the night and avoid that dip, and help them not wake up in the middle of the night. Yeah, so I hope this was helpful. This was interesting to you. If you have questions about that, reach out to us. You can reach us at contact@sleeplikeaboss.com. Or if you want to work with one of us, nutrition is one of the things that we definitely focus on. Blood sugar stability is a huge piece of the puzzle. And we're happy to dive in that with you. So we would be happy to hear from you. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.